Aliens killed 2,341 human miners. So Earth threw out the rulebook and declared total war. The cooling gel in senior archivist Elena Vasquez's left temple implant hummed at 47.8 hertz, a frequency she'd learned to ignore over 19 years. But today the gel was cold, unnaturally cold. Her fingers trembled around the ceramic mug of yerba mate. The numbers had finished populating on her screen 10 seconds ago. She didn't need to look at them again. She'd memorized them 37 years ago, back when they were just predictions. Now they were names. The Kryl Dominion's broadcast arrived on every human frequency at 14:03 Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Thraxix III stood on a raised obsidian platform before the Galactic Assembly's 847 empty observer seats. Humanity had no seat. Behind him, a slow-motion loop played. The Rorqual-class mining ship Cobalt promised cracking apart at the 2,341-meter depth of Kythera's upper mantle. All 2,341 colonists, 1,802 adults, 539 miners, vaporized in 0.4 seconds. The footage had been shot from the Kryl's own stellar lance. They'd recorded it, edited it, added a title card reading Enforcement Action, authorized under OR Rights ACCORDS Section 12, Subsection 4. They turned mass murder into a PowerPoint slide. The OR Rights Accords of Galactic Year 14,892 grant us jurisdiction over Kythera's heavy metals, Thraxix III hissed. His translator smoothed the contempt into sterile bureaucraties. Trespassers accept consequences. Humanity has no standing to object. The Assembly's 12 primary species applauded. Some stood. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. Elena watched from her office beneath the old Hague ruins, a converted bomb shelter with a 2.1-meter ceiling. The walls were lined with binders, 847 of them. Each binder contained the documentation for one Kryl military installation. She'd been updating them for 19 years. The ceiling pressed down. It always did. She'd toured the assembly chamber once, 11 years ago. The pale marble columns rose 47 meters. The alien ambassadors sat on elevated platforms while humanity's observers stood in a sunken pit, necks craned at 37-degree angles just to see the speakers. The architects had calculated everything, except human cervical spine strength. Ambassador Mariam Al-Hassan had stood in that pit for 9 years. Her neck still clicked when she turned her head too fast. She'd sent Elena a message after every session. One day, they'll look up at us. Elena took a slow sip of the mate, 63 degrees Celsius. Perfect. She set the mug down on a coaster printed with the faded logo of the Cobalt Promise Colony, a gift from her cousin Myra, who died aboard the ship 3 hours ago, 2,341 meters beneath Kythera's crust, where the heat had turned her into gas before she knew it was happening. Myra had been 34. She'd baked 47,000 loaves of sourdough in her life. She'd taught Elena how to maintain a starter. She'd named hers Doughy when she was 12 and never changed it. The coaster had Myra's handwriting on the back. For Elena, so you never forget where bread comes from. Elena opened her secure terminal. She typed exactly 14 words to the Unified Earth Council. Activate Article 0. I'm invoking the Geneva Counter-Preference Doctrine. She did not shout, she did not cry. She finished the mate. The Council's response arrived in 11 seconds. They'd been waiting 37 years. The part that still keeps me up at night, it's not the ships they erased, it's the question those computers asked. Stay close. 37 years earlier, before Cobalt 3, before any human had seen a Kryl, the first contact massacre of 2089. The Beagle-class survey ship Magellan, 47 humans aboard, incinerated by Kryl advance scouts. The official death toll then, 47. The unofficial number the Council never released, 12,844 humans killed in accidents and misunderstandings over the next 9 years. Accident, misunderstanding. Those words appeared in every official communication from the Assembly. Regrettable misunderstanding. Tragic accident during routine patrol. Unfortunate escalation beyond intended parameters. The Kryl never apologized. They never even acknowledged the deaths. They just kept expanding. The Ore Rights Accords came in year 9. Humanity signed. They had no choice. The Kryl Dominion already controlled 23 mining worlds. Humanity had been forced off. The Assembly, all 12 primary species, voted unanimously. Alina had been 26 then, a junior archivist with dirt under her fingernails and grief she couldn't name. She'd watched the vote on a crackling viewscreen in a bunker on Mars. When the results came in, she'd walked outside and looked up at the red sky. She'd made a promise, not to anyone else, just to herself. We will not forget. Article 0 was drafted in year 8 of that slaughter. Before the Accords, before humanity knew how bad it would get, a junior legal aide named Aris Thorne had written the first draft on a napkin during a 47-hour negotiation session that went nowhere. The Kryl had walked out of that session. They didn't even leave a note. Aris kept the napkin. He'd framed it. It hung in his office next to a photograph of his late husband. Alina had read the original document, handwritten, 847 pages. The paper had yellowed edges and smelled like her grandfather's study, old books and tea and something faintly sweet. It had been updated 2,341 times, once for every colonist lost today. The sunken vault smelled like old paper and cold concrete. Alina assembled them in 6 hours. She'd had the list ready for 19 years. Dr. Aris Thorne arrived first, 71 years old. Knitted vest his late husband made blue and gray, the colors of Earth from orbit. He'd worn it to every major negotiation of his career. He said it made him feel like someone was watching his back. He poured himself a cup of Earl Grey, 2 sugars, precise. The spoon clinked against the ceramic 3 times. They did it, he said, not a question. They did it, Alina said. Aris set down his tea. How many? 2,341. He nodded once. Then he sat down and started pulling binders from the shelves. He didn't ask what came next. He already knew. General Marcus Webb came next. 58 years old. Walked with a slight limp from an old battle wound. A Kryl scout drone had taken his left knee during a skirmish over Proxima Centauri. He'd refused a prosthetic. Said the limp reminded him why he was still alive. He carried 3 photographs in his breast pocket. His grandmother, his mother, his daughter. His grandmother had been on the Magellan. 37 years, Marcus said. My grandmother's bones are still drifting somewhere between here and the Kryl border. They never even sent a recovery team. He set the photographs on the table. Her name was Aisha. She was 7 when she wrote her name on the inside of a closet door. I found it when I was 9. She'd spelled it wrong. Isha. Marcus touched the photograph. She never got to learn how to spell it right. Alina didn't answer. She didn't need to. Leilani Lani Kiloha arrived third. 44 years old. Former corporate espionage. She'd been fired from 3 different intelligence agencies for personality conflicts. The conflicts were that she was always right and they were always wrong. She drank black coffee from a chipped mug that said "World's Okayest Employee." The chip was from 2019. She'd had the mug for 47 years. It had been her father's. She hadn't slept in 47 hours. Kryl birth registry, Lani said, dropping a data slate on the table. 3 primary hatcheries, 12,847 ships, 847 military installations, 1,204,441 active personnel. She took a long drink of coffee, didn't sit down. I've been in their systems for 9 years. They never noticed. She smiled. It wasn't warm. Their security protocols haven't been updated since galactic year 14,001. That's 891 years ago. Their encryption is older than their empire. Lani set the mug down. I could have deleted everything on day 1, but Alina said wait. She looked at Alina. Why did you make me wait? Alina met her eyes. Because deletion isn't enough. They need to know it happened. They need to wonder who did it. They need to spend the rest of their existence afraid of every keystroke. Lani's smile widened. You're terrifying. No, Alina said. I'm patient. Commander Sana Okonkwo walked in on prosthetic legs that cost 2.3 million credits. She'd lost both at Kythera's secondary colony, the one the Kryl hit 3 years ago as a warning. She hadn't been on duty. She'd been at her daughter's birthday party. The prosthetics whirred with every step. Sana said the sound reminded her she was still moving forward. She didn't limp, she marched. "I want names," Sana said. "Not ships, not numbers, names." She sat down, her legs folded beneath her with a soft hydraulic hiss. "My daughter's name is Amara. She's 12. She asked me last week if the Kryl would come back. I told her no." Sana looked at Alina. "Was I lying?" Alina didn't answer for a long moment. Then, "You were telling her what she needed to hear. Now we make it true." Giant J. Park was the youngest, 31 years old. He kept a sourdough starter on his desk named Doughy. The starter was 117 years old, passed down through 4 generations of his family. It had survived the first contact massacre, the 9 years of accidents, and 3 interstellar relocations. He broke off a piece of bread from his pocket while Alina was talking. It was still warm. "Why roster?" Jay asked. Alina pulled up a hologram, the Kryl Dominion's military registry. All 12,847 ships, 847 bases, 3 primary hatcheries, 1 central command nexus. The hologram flickered. Alina had been updating it for 19 years. Every new ship, every new installation, every new soldier. "Because we're not going to delete their navy, General Webb," Alina said. "We're going to void their names. Every single one. From every legal, economic, and historical record in the galaxy." Jay chewed his bread. "So they're not dead, they're just not real anymore." "They're a typo," Alina said, "and we're backspacing." Aris Thorne smiled into his Earl Grey. "Geneva is void," they said, Aris said. "They thought we meant the convention." Ambassador Mariam Al-Hassan arrived last, 67 years old. She'd stood in the Assembly's sunken pit for 9 years, the only human representative allowed. Her neck had permanent damage from looking up at a 37-degree angle. She walked with a slight tilt, like she was still trying to see something above her. "I watched them vote," Mariam said. 12 primary species, every single one. They didn't just approve the Ore Rights Accords, they cheered." She sat down at the table. Her hands were steady. "I stood in that pit for 9 years. 9 years of looking up. 9 years of watching them look down at me like I was something they'd scraped off their shoes." Mariam touched her neck. "The doctors said I'd need surgery. I told them no. I want to remember. Every time I turn my head and feel that click, I want to remember exactly who did this to me." She looked at Alina. "Do you have the files?" "I have everything," Alina said. "Operation Burn the Roster," Alina said, sliding 7 identical data slates across the table. 93 days, 4 phases. The room went quiet. "Phase 1, Alina said, banking void. The Galactic Banking Guild's ledger ran on consensus algorithms. Every ship, every station, every registered vessel had a unique identifier. If enough nodes flagged a vessel as lost with all hands, the algorithm auto-corrected. No appeal, no review, just math." Jay's team inserted 12,847 digital markers over 31 days. The markers didn't delete anything. They just told the algorithm, "Check again." The algorithm checked. The algorithm found inconsistencies. The algorithm flagged 2,341 Kryl military vessels as lost with all hands. The ships were still flying, still crewed, still armed. But according to every bank, every insurer, every shipping registry in the galaxy, they didn't exist anymore. On day 31, Jay walked into the sunken vault with bread flour on his shirt and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The guild just sent a congratulatory notice," Jay said. "They wanted to thank us for improving data hygiene." He set a piece of bread on the table, fresh baked. "I made this while the last markers were uploading. It took 45 minutes, the same amount of time it took to make 12,847 ships disappear." Lanny laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. 45 minutes, she said. 891 years of bad security. 45 minutes. She picked up the bread, held it like it weighed something. "They came, they struck, they vanished." Eris nodded. "That's the thing about empires. They think they're permanent. They're not even bread. The ITER found them on day 32. Flying mammals. 47,000 survivors left. Their migration world had been cracked open for minerals. The Kryl didn't even remember which fleet had done it. "We remember," the idiot delegate said. Her name was unpronounceable in human phonetics. She let them call her Idiot One. "We remember every stone, every egg, every child who fell into the void." She unfolded her wings. They were scarred, old burns from the Kryl's mining lasers. I was there. I saw the sky crack. I felt the heat on my back as my homeworld broke apart. Idiot One touched one of the scars. "This was my mother's colony. She died in the first minute. I don't know if she felt pain. I hope she didn't." Lanny had been in Kryl systems for 9 years. She knew their birth registry protocols. She knew the backup schedules. She knew the blind spots. The idiot knew how to fly through sensor nets without leaving traces. Together, they infiltrated the Dominion's own birth registry. 1,204,441 personnel files. Deleted. No names, no ranks, no service records, no DNA profile, no next of kin. The deletion took 47 minutes, the same amount of time it took to bake a loaf of sourdough. The Kryl Military Command woke up on day 58 and opened their personnel databases. The computers asked, "Which soldiers?" No lights in the windows, no smoke from the chimneys, no footprints in the snow. That was the question, not "What are your orders?" Not "Where should we deploy?" Just "Which soldiers?" The answer, none. Aris Thorn poured himself another cup of Earl Grey. 2 sugars, precise. "That's going to leave a mark," he said. Elder SSS Thera arrived on day 59. She was Vel Serpentine, 847 years old, mother of 1,203 children, all dead. The Kryl had reduced her people from 9 billion to 12,847 survivors. She'd waited 2,838 years for someone to understand. "I have watched empires rise and fall," SSS Thera said. Her voice was a dry rasp, like leaves dragging across stone. "The Kryl are not an empire. They are a wound that forgot it was supposed to heal." She placed 6 data crystals on the table. Original crime logs. Galactic year 12,009. Every atrocity, every massacre, every child's name. She touched one crystal with a clawed finger. 1,203. "That's how many of my children I named. The rest died before I could." SSS Thera uncoiled slightly. Her scales caught the light. They were dark gray, almost black, but underneath, if you looked close, there was a faint pattern. Stars. She tattooed her children's birth constellations onto her own skin. "I have been naming the dead for 2,838 years, she said. "I have 12,847 survivors left to remind. When I am gone, they will continue." Aris opened the first crystal. The room went silent as the logs played. 2,838 years of crimes. 12,847 witnesses. 1,203 dead children spoken aloud by name, one by one, for 11 hours. SSS Thera did not stop, did not drink water, did not rest. When she finished, her voice was gone. She wrote the last name on a piece of paper. Elena read it aloud. Thera, age 47 standard cycles. Killed in the first purge. She liked watching stars. The room was silent for a long time. Then SSS Thera whispered, so quietly that Elena almost didn't hear. Thera was my youngest. She was born 3 days before the purge. I never got to see her open her eyes. Elena didn't say she was sorry. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry was never enough. Instead, she poured SSS Thera a cup of mate, 63 degrees, precise. "Drink," Elena said, "then we finish this." Day 87. Aris Thorn presented 847 pages of legal documentation to the Galactic Assembly. The Doctrine of Historical Void, Article 0's real name. It argued that any species or government found to have engaged in systematic erasure of another species' existence forfeited its own right to be remembered. The Assembly's legal committee read the document. Then they read it again. Then they realized they couldn't find a single procedural objection, because Article 0 had been written 37 years ago and updated 2,341 times by the best legal minds humanity had. They'd closed every loophole. They'd anticipated every objection. They'd written the law so tightly that the only way to disagree with it was to admit you supported genocide. The Kryl delegation walked out. Ambassador Thraxic's 3 final words before leaving: "This is absurd. You cannot erase history. History is permanent." Elder SSS Thera, sitting in the observer section with her 12,847 surviving Vel behind her, whispered so quietly that only the human delegation heard her. "History is not permanent, memory is. And we have forgotten nothing." She touched her scales. The constellations of her dead children glittered under the lights. "They will forget us," SSS Thera said. "We will not forget them." Day 88. Ambassador Mariam Al-Hassan stood in the Assembly's sunken pit for the first time in 11 years. But this time 12 coalition ambassadors stood beside her. Vel, Tadek, Idir, 9 others, each with specific numbers, each with a grudge older than human civilization. The Tadek delegate, a bipedal amphibian whose oceans had been boiled by Kryl waste, held a piece of fresh bread in one trembling hand. General Webb had baked it that morning. 400 years, the Tadek delegate said. 400 years since I smelled yeast. She didn't eat the bread. She held it like a holy relic. We had bakeries once, before the Kryl boiled our oceans, before they turned our seas into steam. My grandmother was a baker. She used to say that bread was the first technology. The delegate's skin was dry, flaking. It had been 400 years since rain had fallen on her homeworld. "Yeast is alive," she said. "It breathes, it grows, it survives. We thought we were the only ones who remembered how to tend it." She looked at General Webb. "You baked this at 3 a.m. You used your grandmother's recipe. You proofed it twice because the humidity here is wrong." Webb nodded. "How did you know?" "Because I can taste the patience," the delegate said. 400 years, and I can still taste patience. When the assembly convened, 473 seats were filled with species who'd stayed silent for centuries. They hadn't come to speak. They'd come to witness. Mariam Al-Hassan looked up at the elevated platforms where the 12 primary species sat. Her neck didn't hurt anymore. She didn't know if that was because she'd gotten used to the angle or because she didn't care. "The council killed one human girl on camera 37 years ago," Mariam said. "Earth did not declare war. We filed a motion. You laughed." She paused. "The motion passed. You just didn't read the fine print." Mariam touched her neck. It clicked. "We spent 37 years making sure the last human to die for your convenience would be a 34-year-old baker on a mining ship. Her name was Myra. She liked sourdough." Mariam looked up at the 12 primary species. She didn't strain anymore. "And now we're going to read her name, along with 2,340 others. And you're going to listen." The assembly chamber fell silent. Mariam Al-Hassan stood in the sunken pit with her neck straight. 12 ambassadors stood beside her. Behind them, 473 seats filled with species who had once been told they didn't matter. The Vel sat in a cluster near the back. Their scales caught the light. Each one carried the names of the dead. The Tadek sat near the water fountain. Their skin was still dry. But they had bread now. The Idir folded their wings and watched. 47,000 left. 47,000 witnesses. Ambassador Thraxix III returned to his elevated platform. His 7 fingers tapped the obsidian railing. "Tap, tap, tap." "You have no authority," Thraxix III said. "The doctrine of historical void is not law. It is a suggestion written by a species that cannot defend its own mining claims." Aris Thorn stood up from the human delegation's bench. His knitted vest was wrinkled. His hands were steady. "Article 0 was filed with the Assembly's legal registry 37 years ago," Aris said. "Section 12, subsection 4, paragraph 9, the doctrine of historical void. You voted on it." Thraxix III translator stuttered. "We voted on a trade agreement." "You voted on a trade agreement that contained Article 0 as an addendum," Aris said. 47 pages into the fine print. Section 12, subsection 4, paragraph 9. The Kryl delegation signed it. The Assembly's records clerk confirmed it. Her voice was small. "The document is authentic." Thraxix III scales darkened. "That is not possible. We would never." You would never read 847 pages of fine print, Aris interrupted. That was the point. We wrote it. You signed it. And for 37 years you've been bound by a law you didn't know existed. Aris sat down. He poured himself a cup of Earl Grey, 2 sugars precise. The pen is warm, he said. The Kryl delegation tried to leave. The doors were locked. General Marcus Webb stood by the main entrance. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't need one. He was holding a piece of bread. Sit down, Webb said. Thraxix III did not sit. I am an ambassador of the Kryl Dominion, Thraxix III said. You cannot detain me. Webb broke the bread in half. The smell filled the chamber. Yeast, wheat, patience. I'm not detaining you, Webb said. I'm asking you to witness. He held out the other half. My grandmother's recipe. She never got to taste it. The Kryl killed her on the Magellan before she could bake it. Thraxix III stared at the bread. Webb set it on the railing. Eat it or don't, but you're going to watch. The transcript of the Kryl's crimes began playing. Elder SSS Thera had provided 2,838 years of documentation. Every massacre, every species dissolved, every world cracked open for minerals. The assembly watched. The Vel watched. The Tadic watched. Their skin began to moisten. Tears, maybe, or just the memory of water. The Idir watched. Their wings trembled. The 12 primary species watched. Some of them had voted for the Ore Rights Accords. Some of them had provided ships to the Kryl. Some of them had looked away. The transcript took 11 hours to play. No one left. At hour 7, a Tadic child began to cry. The sound was thin, high-pitched, like a kettle boiling. The Tadic delegate held the child. SHH, SHH, it's almost over. The child pointed at the screen. Mama, that's where Mama went. The delegate didn't correct her. On the screen, a Kryl ship was boiling an ocean. The water turned to steam. The steam rose, and then there was nothing. That's where Mama went, the delegate said. Into the sky, and now she's everywhere. The child stopped crying. At hour 9, the Idir delegate stood up. Her wings unfolded. The scars from the mining lasers were white against her dark skin. I was there, Idir 1 said. When they cracked our world, I felt the ground fall away beneath me. I flew for 3 days without stopping. My children died in my arms, one by one, 3 of them. She touched her chest. They are still here, in my heartbeat. Every time my heart beats, I hear their names. She turned to the assembly. You don't get to forget. We will not let you. At hour 10, Ambassador Thraxix III tried to speak. Humanity has committed atrocities. Your own history. We know, Elena said. She stood up from the human delegation's bench. Her ceramic mug was in her hand. The Cobalt 3 coaster was underneath it. We know our history. We know what we've done. That's why we wrote the law. She walked to the edge of the sunken pit. We didn't write Article 0 because we're better than you. We wrote it because we know exactly what happens when no one is watching. Elena looked up at Thraxix III. Her neck didn't hurt. The difference is that we stopped. We wrote it down. We apologized. We fixed things, not fast enough, not perfectly, but we tried. She set her mug on the railing. You never tried. You just kept boiling oceans. And now the oceans are empty. And the children are gone. And your computers are asking which soldiers because there are no soldiers anymore. There are just names we're going to read aloud until you can't pretend you never heard them. At hour 11, Elder SSS Thera spoke for the last time. Her voice was gone. She wrote her words on a piece of paper. Elena read them. When I was young, I believed that time healed all wounds. I have lived 847 years. I have learned that time does not heal. It only gives you more room to carry the weight. SSS Thera wrote another line. The Kryl believed that if they destroyed enough, no one would remember what was lost. They were wrong. We remember. We will always remember. And now the galaxy will remember too. She set down the paper. Then she stood up. Her serpentine body uncoiled. She was taller than anyone in the chamber. I am ready to go home now. The vote took 12 minutes. The doctrine of historical void passed unanimously. The 12 primary species did not cheer this time. They sat in silence. The Kryl delegation stood in the back of the chamber. There was nowhere for them to sit. Their seats had been removed. Ambassador Thraxix III raised his 7-fingered hand. You cannot erase us. Our history spans 12,000 galactic years. Memory, total erasure. Memory without witnesses, without records, without mercy. Elena Vasquez stood in the sunken pit. She was still holding her ceramic mug. The Cobalt 3 coaster was still underneath it. Her cousin's handwriting was on the back. For Elena, so you never forget where bread comes from. She looked up at Thraxix 3. You're not criminals, ambassador. You're a typo. And we're backspacing. The transcript was broadcast to 47,000 inhabited worlds. In the sunken pit, Ambassador Mariam Al-Hassan did not smile. She just stood taller than she ever could looking up. The Kryl delegation stood frozen. Their computers were already updating. New records, new laws, new truth. Kryl Dominion status, NON entity. Shinari had found the targets. Dejo had drawn the plan. Wuen had trained the soldiers. Tessu had given the order. And now, a 63-year-old archivist with a ceramic mug had pressed the final key. But Elena wasn't watching the assembly anymore. She was counting. 847 days passed. 1 day for each Kryl installation erased. The sunken vault was quieter now. The binders were gone. Eris Thorn had retired to a small house on the coast of what used to be Portugal. He baked bread every morning. He said it helped him remember why patience mattered. Marcus Webb had opened a bakery. He named it Aisha's. The sign was hand-painted. The bread was his grandmother's recipe. People came from 3 systems to taste it. Lanny Kiloha was still drinking black coffee from her chipped mug. She'd taken a job teaching security protocols at the new Academy of Historical Integrity. Her first lecture was titled, How to Make an Empire Disappear in 47 Minutes. Jay Park was still tending doughy. The sourdough starter was 118 years old now. He'd written a book about it. The title was Patience, A Baker's Guide to Asymmetric Warfare. Commander Sana Okonkwo walked her daughter to school every morning. The prosthetics still whirred. Amara was 15 now. She wanted to be an archivist. Like Aunt Elena, she said. Sana didn't cry. Not in front of Amara. But when she got home, she sat in the dark and let the tears come. For the ones who didn't get to walk their children to school. Mariam Al-Hassan's next surgery was scheduled for next month. She'd finally agreed to it. I don't need to remember the angle anymore, she said. I need to look forward. Elder SSS Thera had returned to the Vel homeworld. There were 12,847 survivors. They built a memorial. It had 1,203 stones, one for each of SSS Thera's children. Kes Thera's stone was the smallest. It had a carving of a star. Kithera's surface was quiet now. The 2,341-meter shaft to the upper mantle had been capped with a transparent ceramic window. Below, the cooled magma glittered like amber. The ship was gone. The colonists were gone. But the light was still there. Elena arrived alone. She walked to the edge of the window. The ceramic was warm. The magma below pulsed. A slow heartbeat. She opened her notebook. The pages were yellowed. She'd been adding to this notebook for 37 years. Every name, every date, every crime. She began to read. 2,341 names. It took 9 hours. She did not stop, did not drink water, did not sit down. The first name, Myra Vasquez, age 34, baker. She liked sourdough and the color blue. Her starter was named Doughy. She was 12 when she named it. The Tadic delegate arrived at hour 2. She stood beside Elena. Her skin was still dry, but she was learning to hope again. The Idir delegate arrived at hour 3. Her wings were folded. Her scars were white in the light. The Vel arrived at hour 4. All 12,847 of them. They stood in silence. Their scales caught the light. The constellations of their dead glittered. By hour 7, 847 other species had arrived. Survivors of other massacres, other forgotten peoples. They stood on Kithera's surface and listened to the names. At the 1,802nd name, Elena stopped. Myra Vasquez, she said again. She had already read Myra's name, but she needed to say it twice, because Myra had deserved more than one mention. Elena's voice cracked. Myra Vasquez, age 34. She taught me how to bake bread. She taught me how to be patient. She taught me that some promises don't need to be spoken. Elena wept. She wept for 2,341 colonists. She wept for 1,203 Vel children. She wept for 47,000 Idir. She wept for 903,221 Taduk. She wept for every species the Kryl had dissolved. She wept for 12 years of standing in the dark and waiting. She wept for Myra, who never got to see Doe turn 118 years old. And then she finished the list. Later, Elena sat on a stone bench overlooking the memorial window. The magma pulsed below. The light was amber. The names were carved into the ceramite frame, all 2,341 of them. Myra's name was at the top. Baker, believer in patience. Elder SSS Thera sat beside her. The old serpentine scales were dull now. She was tired. 847 years of carrying weight would do that. Was this justice? SSS Thera asked. Elena poured 2 cups of yerba mate, 63 degrees, precise. No, she said quietly. Justice would be bringing them back. We can't do that. And we told the galaxy we wouldn't pretend to try. SSS Thera accepted the cup. Her clawed fingers wrapped around the ceramic. The steam rose. Then what did you do? Elena looked at the names. Myra's name. Kesthera's name. 2,341 plus 1,203 plus 47,000 plus 903,221. Too many names. Always too many. We wrote a rule so clear, so undeniable, that no one will ever be allowed to forget their names again. The Kryl didn't lose a war, Elder. They lost the right to be remembered. She handed SSS Thera the second cup. The coaster stayed in Elena's pocket. Some promises didn't need witnesses. SSS Thera drank. The mate was warm. It tasted like patience. There is a word in my language, SSS Thera said. It means the weight of names carried forward. We have no word for forgetting. We never needed one. Elena nodded. What is your word for what you did? SSS Thera asked. Elena thought about it. She thought about 37 years of waiting. She thought about 847 pages of fine print. She thought about a 34-year-old baker who never got to see her bread rise again. We're not warriors, Elena said. We're librarians. We just have a very aggressive overdue policy. The magma pulsed below. The light was amber. The names were carved into stone. Elena finished her mate. The cup was empty. The coaster was in her pocket. The promise was kept. She looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, Myra's atoms were still drifting. The Kryl had turned her into gas, but they couldn't turn her into nothing. Nothing was permanent. Memory was. We will not forget you, Elena whispered. The wind took the words. And below, 2,341 meters beneath the surface, the magma glowed like a second sun.